Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted, and I say this with great emphasis, delighted to welcome you all to another TAG event, this time featuring the work and the presence via Zoom of Maxim Atayants. So Maxim is going to talk us through a few projects, as the website suggested. But I think it's absolutely great to have, from my own point of view, personal point of view, someone who's a great friend and so multi-talented, because he's a master draftsman and really, I think, an artist in the sort of true sense of the word, and someone who shares with me this love of Roman architecture. And so this is, I think, always for Maxim, I think I can say this correctly, is that the ultimate reference is antiquity, in terms of how one absorbs and moves forward the classical tradition, even despite the great wonders and masterpieces that have followed in subsequent centuries. So anyway, Maxim is an architect, apart from a wonderful artist and photographer, and he works principally in Saint Petersburg, based in Saint Petersburg, but we'll see projects around Moscow, and he's gradually built up a practice purely through reputation and through the quality of his work. And otherwise, he also teaches at the Academy of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg, and where he teaches either about the history of classical architecture or the orders and other aspects of classical architecture. And recently, he's had the signal honor of being made an honorary member of the equivalent of the Academy of Architecture. I think it actually includes constructional sciences, which is part of the very prestigious Academy of Sciences in Russia. So congratulations, Maxim, for that recent appointment. Now, I think that's probably all we need as an introduction. I am in danger of waxing lyrical about Maxim's characters as a person and as a friend, and his generosity of spirit, but I think it's better that I don't embarrass him any further and hand over to him.
Thank you for the introduction, Mark. And dear colleagues and friends, I feel myself with a big responsibility to talk in front of you, of course, and I will start with some pictures. Just let me check, because it's always interesting how any architect makes his choice between classical tradition, modern, so-called modern tradition, or brutalistic, or whatever else. And I was born in the very middle of Russia, let's say about 200 kilometers to the south from Moscow. And the surrounding, the city fabric of my native town was some rather provincial but nice neoclassic of 18th century and beginning of 19th century, and some typical Russian architecture of late medieval period, as you can see in these pictures. And all this beautiful historical center was surrounded and invaded with the quite ugly Soviet modern buildings of 1960s and 70s. And so literally, I just today, this morning, trying to find some pictures, I just used the Google Maps images to find some pictures from my childhood. So in within, let's say, 500 meters of the place where I was living in my childhood, there was a choice between this and the only beautiful stuff concerning buildings were this sort of latest neoclassic of 1940s, 1950s, or as a contrast, this absolutely brutal modernistic crap. And so this was the only source of some neoclassical or classical spirit in architecture, which was available for me during my school time or before I became a student of the Academy of Fine Arts. The Academy of Fine Arts was founded in the last quarter of 18th century as a big imperial fine arts academy, like Académie du Beaux-Arts in France, for example, and it is situated in Saint Petersburg. And Saint Petersburg is the city which I think I don't need to introduce, but just let's remind about some images. You can see a pure neoclassical beauty, quite severe, of this northern capital city of Imperial Russia of 18th and 19th centuries, and also the huge river, the Egyptian sculptures, granite embankments and stairs, and the very building of the Academy of Fine Arts. You can see it here and on the next slide across the river is the palace built by French architect Jean-Baptiste Valin de la Motte in an early classicistic manner with some traces of Baroque in the center. And this also is about 1780s. And the building is teaching. And the walls are teaching, as they say, and in this case, it's literally in this way. And since the education was rather modernistic, it's a bit strange in this surrounding, but it is in this way. And it was a sort of struggle between my intentions as a student of architectural department, to do something with columns or with rhythm or with classical logic of forms and shapes and spaces. And so it was some struggle, but the diploma thesis, the diploma project was the project of huge museum of Russian Navy, which should be built on the water space in the Finnish Gulf, just near the city. And the project, you can see it's a bit bizarre tradition, maybe too academic. But the interesting point was that it was 1995. I was already almost 30 years old, and this was the first diploma project, graduate project, which was made entirely in pure classic language after the break of 40 or 42 years. And this was a sensation, this was a scandal, but afterwards it was highly graded, and with the same summer of 1995, I took part in the Prince of Wales School of Architecture in Rome, in Caprarola, and then in Biarritz in southern France. And maybe for most of you it's difficult to imagine, but it was post-Soviet era, and so to visit Rome in 1995 after all of this was literally my first voyage outside of Russia. And so Rome was first. place in Europe I've seen in my life. As I usually like to compare, it's like when newborn chicken looks and see some silhouette. The chicken believes this is his mother. So it's imprinting, as the biologists used to name it. And so I was imprinted by Rome deeply. And there was some particular experience. This is my drawing of the Hadrian Temple on Piazza di Pietro in Rome. And this was first ancient building I've seen directly. And it was a very deep impact because Rome is full of columns, of cornices, of flutes, bases, acanthus leaves, but this was something different in a sense that I've seen the same shapes, the same classical forms, but so old that they are even not enough to say that the stones were aged. They were like eaten by time, or looking like geological structure, but with a very sophisticated surfaces of human touch, of architectural touch. And this was very deep for me. Then before starting to talk about the practical architectural activities, about the projects, I would rather say that in all my activities, photographing, drawing, teaching, academic researches on ancient architecture, architectural projects, I think I treat all this as just integral parts of the same activity, because the base is my admiring of the classical antiquity and the Greek and Roman and Hellenistic architecture, and all these activities, photos, drawings, projects, etc., just the different ways to express this admiration. At least I understand myself this way. So I started to draw, and coming back for a moment for this picture, I must say that Mark Wilson-Jones, who is now with us, he was the person, he was my cicerone in Rome, let's say, in this Roman way. And that's why our friendship is already within decades, and the idea of the beauty of Roman and Greek architecture is in the base of this relationship. Well, and speaking about the pictures, this is also picture of Paestum. The Paestum is another place which is very important for me, because the Roman temples, especially this temple of Apollo, which was known as Temple of Hera and Temple of Poseidon before, I tried to draw, and while drawing the architecture, what my purpose doing this? I don't want to produce a beautiful picture. The drawing is something different for me. It's a sort of activity where I try, first of all, to understand what I see, to understand, to research by this process of drawing, to research, to understand, and then to share my feelings in front of these beautiful buildings, maybe in these circumstances. Well, and now I will show some more from I think from the end of 1990s and for the 10 or 15 years after that, I used to travel very intensively through all the Roman world, from Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, Jordan, Syria, Turkey, and Europe. And sometimes it was difficult, not as difficult and dangerous as now, but it wasn't a touristic way of doing. And I tried to draw and to make photos. This is the theater in Palmyra, for example, with my notes through the paper. And then these are another pictures of Roman buildings in Tunisia. Another Palmyra drawing. Goes a little bit slowly. This is a huge piece of cornice from Baalbek. All these pictures are of some modest size because this is a travel pictures, and it's convenient to use just a normal size of paper for that. This is also Baalbek. Theater of Sabratha, quadriforme arch in Tripoli, with some also, you can see here some facade and plan, some analytic part of this, and then in much more relaxed atmosphere of nowadays Rome, with a good pasta and good climate. I used to visit Rome about 10 times a year, maybe, for drawings, before this last problem with COVID. I hope we will return to the normal activity. This is Ephesus with the Celsus Library, the famous facade in the shape of scanifrons. This is the picture of Roman Forum. And then this is again Palmyra, and there is some interesting and dramatic story about Palmyra, because I was there in 2005 when it was quiet and comfortable, and I just draw the Temple of Bel here, and then I came back to Palmyra 2 years ago in a quite dangerous expedition to see, mostly as not as a draftsman, but for the research, what's going on there after all these explosions, what is the condition of the ruins, what scientists through UNESCO can do there, etc. So this is the Temple of Bel before, and this unfortunately, this number of stones is all the remains from the temple, and I'm working there, trying to understand and to feel this. I will talk a little bit more about this picture because the challenge for me while drawing there was to avoid the pastoral romantic ruin impression, because the genre of romantic paintings with the ruins, with the shepherds, with the goats and ruins, was very, very often in Europe in 2 centuries ago. But this is not that, because this is just a trace of the war crime, and this is trace of violence, which I feel like as it's a violence to some of my family, for example. And I tried to show this in these drawings. The same for the Triumphal Arch of Palmyra. This is the drawing of the arch in 1990, in 2005. And this as 2 years ago, I made this drawing, and with some military equipment there, etc., etc. So this is rather sad, but it's important, and this is a process. And also, as a result of this expedition, me with my studio, by our own means, we tried to make the project of digital reconstruction of Temple of Bel of very high quality, with a high precision and scientific and technical precision. There are some pages of this project. For example, this is the pilaster capital from the cell of the Temple of Bel. This is the photo of the capital, and this and this. There are images of 3D generated images from our model. The same for the Ionic capital here. And even all the blocks with the sculpture were digitally restored. And this work is continuing now. And as some of the results, we built a model of 1 to 30, I think, the scale. And this part is the complete restoration of the original view of the temple as it was built approximately in Tiberius time. Well, as for the architectural activity, I started, I did not join any architectural bureau. I tried to organize my own and started with some rather small projects, as for example, some private houses. This is a villa not far from Moscow, and you can see maybe some traces of some impressions which I received on Roman East. For example, this so-called Syrian arch or something else. This was my way to make the handmade drawings of the facade. And there are some details of this building when it was built. Some more. This is built not far from Saint Petersburg with the marble portico and brickwork in the late Roman style. Here, this is the picture, overall picture of the complex. And as for the development, within the last 10 or 15 years, we made a lot of projects. I think we built apartment blocks for about maybe 50,000 people total within the last 10 or 15 years. And it was quite difficult to build the development in a traditional way, because everything is against this. Modern economy is against this. Market of construction materials and technologies is against this. And the very ideas of developers are against this. But I tried to find some arguments, and finally, we realized that if such a place is built using traditional language, the speed of sailing is twice more than in typical ugly social blocks, which are under construction nearby. This was one of the initial drawings, and this is already the Google photo of this area built. You can see the difference with the natural river here and with the artificial canal and even parking here. I will show you. And the buildings from some townhouses here to about 5, 6, 8 levels, the blocks, residential blocks with the apartments. There are some pictures. This is this river embankment. This is interesting because terrible problem is the car parking, as you know pretty well. What we decided to do, we decided to imagine that the car parking is a sort of city wall, like a fortress wall, city wall, and so the language we used is this, with a ramp inside the circle, cylindric parts, and the levels for the cars. This is the end of this wall. And even this was possible to do with the few apartments directly above the water of the sort of providing sort of inhabited bridge, as in Johnstone projects, for example, or some other historic examples, which you know better than mine. Another, among all these development projects, another interesting was in southern Russia, in Sochi. This was built for the Olympic Games of 2012, I think. And this is the sort of ski resort with the hotels, apartments, and it was built on the slope of the mountain, and this was rather difficult to do. The result, looking this in this way. And the particular interesting building there is this hotel, because it is situated on the steep slope of the mountain. And so here we have about maybe 6 levels or 7, and from the opposite facade, just 2. And this is the building, and also in the same moment, sort of a retaining wall supporting this this ground, like Mercati Trene, like the in Rome, for example. And maybe you can recognize that the villa of Tiberius on Capri Island was behind my mind when I worked for this building. Well, I think it's impossible to talk too much for the different projects. I want to concentrate on such one of them, which is the most important for me. I feel it like this at the moment, because this is a project of big new cathedral in Saint Petersburg. It sounds a little bit exotic maybe for nowadays, but historically, to build a big church is not just a challenge, but it's the most honorable maybe task for any architect. And the idea was to build the cathedral in the new district of Saint Petersburg, which is inhabited by about at least 300,000 or 400,000 people. But all this land was developed during the Soviet period, so it completely consists of quite ugly modernistic blocks, about from 9 to 12 levels, made of panels, steel concrete panels or bricks, and with no church there, because you can imagine during the communist era, the church construction was absolutely terminated. And still quite, I think about at least 3% of our population needs to went to church weekly for the liturgy. And so they decided to build the church for about capacity of about 4,000 people. It's a big one. And speaking about the Saint Petersburg churches and Saint Petersburg language of churches, I show a couple of my own pictures. This is the view of this Kazan cathedral, which was built in the very beginning of the 19th century, and Saint Isaac Cathedral on horizon, which was built almost in the same period. So two main churches of St. Petersburg we can see on this picture. And this, if you can see the small domes here, this is picture from the St. Isaac Cathedral to the city with the Academy of Fine Arts here on the background. And this is the St. Isaac Cathedral. And so the this is something difficult for me to explain, but I'll try, because this task is at least non-trivial. And I was faced with several serious problems. First of all, church construction in Russia was brutally interrupted because of communist era. But this circumstance allowed us to avoid wild modernistic experiments, as for example in the United States or Europe after 1950s, with all these brutalistic churches, etc., etc. But the problem is that the Russian tradition of church construction was interrupted in rather weak moment of eclecticism with the rather secondary design of churches, like let's say a century ago. And this with this arose the question, in which language I should build it. For me, naturally, classical language is my own and my native language. But it's a good coincidence, because if of course you know this nice theory about vernacular architecture and classic architecture, and some counterbalance between vernacular and classic in any historical building. But speaking about St. Petersburg, we should say that classic is exactly the vernacular of St. Petersburg, because it was built already in neoclassic way from the very beginning. And that's why neoclassic language seems to be natural for this. But what I used to say in by means of this language, because it's simple replica of some 19th century neoclassical temples would be another stylization without any success. It was necessary to find its own original version three-dimensional solution of order expressiveness, suitable for a large temple, and not similar exactly to the examples of St. Petersburg in previous centuries. I remember my experience during my travels and especially early Christian examples of Constantine time and early Christian examples of Roman East. Because in Constantine time in Rome was absolutely without any contradiction, they used classical order of at least pagan origin for Christian temples. And there were very interesting shapes in the early Christian architecture in the Roman East. For example, this is my drawing of the Church of St. Simon in Kalat Siman in Syria, which was built around the very pillar of St. Simon, which was the votive Corinthian column in the center. And this was especially interesting because you can see in the plan that there were no vaults or domes made of stone. And that's why the space inside is very free of massive constructions, not as usual European or Russian cathedrals with the huge pillars under the dome. Because there wasn't a dome, there was the wooden pyramidal roof resting on light open work supports. Another source of my ideas was the image of buildings of late antiquity, the mausoleums, for example, with the huge windows. You can see the mausoleum of St. Helena, the Basilica, of course, and also the window of one of the churches on Aventine. I don't remember, is it Sant'Alessio or next one, with a very interesting fence here. And coming closer to my church, we can see now the initial drawings. This was the very beginning. The idea was developed this way. This and this one is more close to the final solution, with some details, with the proportion in the plan of the cross section, etc., etc. And this is the comparison between the main churches of Saint Petersburg. This is the St. Isaac Cathedral, which is really big. It's about 101 meters till the cross. This is Trinity Church, which is slightly smaller, but still very, very big. This is the Kazan Cathedral. The next is our new church, which is the Church of the Descent of Holy Spirit, and couple of minor churches of historical St. Petersburg. So we can see that how it works as a scale consequence between them. This is a plan. You can see the cross plan, equal pointed cross, main dome here, and a four smaller domes. The western one also works as a bell tower. And here is the SketchUp model of the building. This is the structure, and there are two cross sections. And you can see that what was important for me. That seems I have to use the modern technology, and it's impossible in our circumstances and to be purist enough to build from bricks and lime mortar, for example. And it's of course still concrete, and the iron construction of the domes. So I decided to show this, and don't make any fake walls, any fake massive pillars, and keep this as light as possible. And that's why the interior is transparent in all directions. And this is the picture taken from model, and this is the picture of the building. Building is not finished. I think next summer the external view will be completed. I'm speaking about summer because in our climate we can make outside work of quality only from beginning of May to the end of October. And if you will decide to work in the winter time, it will be something, just some bad consequences. And that's why we can see, for example, that there are some structures like a fence, window fence here, which is absent here. That's why the windows looks rough for a moment, but we can see already this thermal window in the proper way, shaped in the proper way. This is the silhouette of the church from the eastern part, from the eastern apse. And this is the main western entrance with a huge door and with the Corinthian columns. The scale, I think you can see the scale with these human figures, but as far as I remember, it's about 10 meters. The columns and the overall dimension is 56 by 56 in general. That's some details. It's not finished. That's why there are some joints which are not perfect for the moment. Again, the photo of the window. This is the eastern apse of the church. Again, some details, and as you can see on the Corinthian order, the leaves are slightly simplified, and here instead of flower, we can see the winged angel face, more or less of human size. Like here, maybe it's better visible. Then this is maybe a little bit strange projection, but I don't know how else I can explain the interior idea, because the idea of descent of the Holy Spirit is expressed in the interior in such a way through the hierarchical distribution of light, mostly because as you've seen before, there are no windows under this level, and that's why the light is starting there, and the walls are more and more open to the top, and the lowest thermal windows are located in altitude of about 9 meters, And the upper space is permitted with sunlight through the windows, a large window of the drums of small domes, and especially the main dome, and with the lantern there. As for the order here, you can see the octagon going directly to the floor, and with the arches, and columns, small columns based on this details of these stones. And this is a passage between octagon and circle and cylindric shape, and the interior of the dome is shaped with this, I don't know how in English I can name it, but it's like in Adrian Villa or some another Roman concrete buildings of the end of 2nd century. This is the image of the interior. Again, with the columns, iconostasis with the icons, and the frescoes, which also will be only till 9 meters, and all which is above will be white, just for the light, without anything else. This is the gallery for the core, and this is the entrances for the winter time. And, you can compare this picture, for example, with the picture taken about months ago, where you can see something is done and something is under construction. And speaking about all these particular architectural details, happily we still have the tradition of good quality sculptures making models for classical forms. But even with this, I have some time to participate physically in this process, doing first from plaster, and then from gyps, and this is like, as you can see, some capitals, Corinthian capitals of the big order in the interior, and the smaller one where the iconostasis is situated, and with the places for icons here. Again, some architectural forms of which are already built. And as for the floor, this might be also interesting, because the shape of the interior is quite complicated, with the curvilinear, with the straight lines, with the diagonal lines, etc., etc. And I decided to use the as a basic design pattern of Roman floors of 1st and 2nd centuries. You can recognize the Pantheon shape, the shape of imperial fora in Rome, for example, or some others, more or less in the same scale. And I decided to don't try to fit the shape of the ornamentation to the silhouette, but rather imagine that I have sort of surface which has no end, covered with this floor, and building just based on it. So we can see that the pattern goes under the stairs, for example. And this is a computer-generated picture, and from almost the same angle of view, we can see how it works in reality. Everything is under construction here, but the floor is already done. And this is the scale. And now we can see it full of people, because the need for this church is so emergent that even if the church is still under construction, the people wants to pray inside, and they decided to stop construction for most important church holidays and celebrations like the Easter or Christmas or some other, and this is the Christmas service. And this is something touchable for the architect when you can see how your building starts not even to function, but to serve for the people, for the people pray. Then this the image of the cross. And also you can see the Corinthian capital under the cross with a chrisma with the name of Christ in Greek here. And on this picture, you can see what the ugliness is around here. But even with this very visible contrast, the church would not be useful, or rather say will be useless if it will be just an empty space, because the church is built for the inhabitants of these ugly apartment blocks. And they are staying together, but at least in this photo, the cross in the Corinthian capital is going higher than all this ugly brick and panel construction. And there is some funny picture here, because this, as far as I remember, this photo was taken at about 2:03, and this 2 years ago, and it's you can see it's all the same through all my life. I'm working or playing or I don't know, doing something with orders, and here we can see composite and Corinthian models on my shoulders. And here we can see that through last 20 years, the capitals are growing up slightly, and my belly, unfortunately. I think with this, I would be delighted if you will be so kind to ask me something, because it's too long for monologue. Now I'm ready to answer any questions you want to ask me. Thank you for your attention, and I think I am inside the timeline, about between 50 and 55 minutes. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Maxim. That was quite apart from the technical feat of getting everything within the allotted time. Of course, it's the content and the ideas and the glories you've been showing that are so exciting. Now, I'm just checking, is my audio on? Is it working?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I just didn't want to be talking into the void, as I think Adolf Loos would say, who's from the other end of the spectrum, in terms of the decoration we're witnessing. Now, I prefer not to ask a question myself. Of course, I have some, but it'd be great to hear from the audience. Who wants to put a question to Maxim, or an observation, a comment, anything you like?
I can start the ball rolling if you like. It was a fantastic talk, so inspirational. Your watercolors, I just find the texture of them so convincing, of sort of crumbly stone. I just thought that that was just masterful in terms of how you captured the sort of, you know, time-worn nature of these buildings, and not necessarily just time, but destruction as well. And obviously the very sadness of the fact you've been to sort of these places that now no longer stand. And what a noble job you're doing in terms of helping understand the reconstruction, even better than before, because you're kind of undoing the erosion of time and vandalism back to their pristine form, which you don't generally see, do you? Because we're used to seeing, you know, very worn versions of things. And I'm just blown away by the commissions you've got, and the fantastic schemes you're able to build, which is just so awe-inspiring. So it's not really a question, just a big compliment, really.
Well, thank you. And I should, Maxim, I should say before to Simon's comment about the drawing, is that the very annoying thing you have, I should say your talent is extremely annoying, because Maxim, you've seen these pieces of paper with Maxim and his left-handed. I think left-handed people are, you know, they have this advantage. It's extremely unfair. But something you know, he's just got a pen in his hand, and there's no under preparatory drawing. And I've witnessed this. I've been on this. So Maxim was so generous as to accompany me to Greece for a trip, getting photographs for my book on the origins of the orders. And because, you know, Maxim is a way better photographer than I am. So we were at Egina, at the temple there, and we had actually some time left where we'd done our work, and we had, you know, the unique moments on the trip where there was, say, some surplus time, and Maxim started drawing, and he just got out a piece of paper, put it on a block, and got out his pen and applied it roughly in the middle of the paper somewhere, and just started drawing. I thought, this is insane. You know, there's no sketching out of lines or roughly checking what's getting onto the picture. And then before my eyes, a Doric column appeared with fluting and emphasis and everything. And then I went off to do my thing, and I came back in an hour and a quarter, and there was the temple of a fire on the piece of paper. It'd just been taken off, you know, it'd just been sort of collapsed onto the paper. So it's a remarkable talent. So, but I think we probably could spend a long time. Yeah, this is a glorious drawing, this one. I love that. And this is actually one of the things that, when I say Maxim is a great photographer, he's done this book that he very kindly presented to me, and it's in Russian, so obviously I can't understand a word, but I can understand the images. And it's a mixture of his drawings from his travels and photographs. And the photographs are, in their own way, equally wonderful, because they've got this combination of understanding the light. He knows when to take the picture in terms of light and balance and composition, but they're also incredibly informative. So you learn about the building at the same time because of the sort of analytical qualities. But anyway, we can't spend the time praising Maxim, although it'd be very enjoyable. We should have a penetrating question.
Well, we have a question in the chat from Victoria, so I'll read that out. Wonderful talk, Maxim. She says, one question: do you find such a late exposure to architecture outside Russia, namely your trip to Rome, has had any more influence on your work than your contemporaries? For example, do you find having developed skills that can then be practiced in such new places an advantage? If that makes sense.
Well, I think it's only afterwards you can understand what consequence of events in your life drive you to this or different result, because it's easy to see down there from this point, but when you are about 20, 25, it's difficult to imagine what will be next. But I think the love to and passion to classical forms, classical shapes, is something natural, maybe, because you will find anything, even while never been abroad. For example, we know some good architects who were staying only in their own country, but the power and energy of the imagination was so strong that and also we can it's difficult for us to imagine how it was rather century or 2 centuries before. Because for example, imagine 18th century with a brilliant architecture in Britain, in States, already in France, in Germany, in Denmark, for example. But what were the sources? Just secondary engravings sometime, or travel sketches of somebody else. But the power of imagination was so strong that they felt sometime these buildings more perfectly than in nowadays, with all these low quality pictures, the myriads of internet pictures. So it's unpredictable. And what I want to say that it's very important to be active while looking at the building, because just staying in front of it, you will be tired or will be boring in 10 minutes. But when you will start to draw, you will actively research the like radar. You will research the building in every millimeter. I know this particularly because, for example, when I make photos of something, which is also a research, I understand like 50% less than while I'm doing a drawing. And if somebody is absolutely disabled to draw, but I don't believe it's possible, but why not? It's the same will be, you can talk, you can write some notes in your sketchbook with just some very simple sketches there, but it will be the active interactive process of working with this particular building or group of building of city space. And this is very important. Maybe it's not the direct answer on the question, but it's something which was inspired by your question. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And then she has another little question, which was, do you have a favorite pen and ink brand?
Well. First of all, it was a sort of development because my budgets were very different 30 years ago and now. And as for the brown ink, and now I use also gray ink, like in Canaletto drawings, for example, drawing linear drawing with brown ink, and then wash with a gray one for the more vivid impression. And for the brown ink, I used to mix it myself from some chemical stuff which used for the wood in carpentry sometime. And last 10 or 15 years, I used to visit the Cartelleria near Pantheon with a good brown ink there. Il Papiro, I think, the name, or some others. As for the pen, different, very different. I think I have more than 10 of them, of different quality, of different character of pen, different character of line. Maybe I will see inside. There are some. This is of Japan pen of good quality. This is some almost antiquarian because it's a new one, but new means not used, of 1950s. I bought in some antiquarian shop in Rome. There are different, and when it was difficult for me to use all this precious and expensive stuff, I remember I just bought 10 cheaper pen and made a sort of Darwin process, trying to make a choice between them, and used one or two, and 8 or 9 of them were going to the trash bin. But it depends.
Yeah.
But it's important to say, it seems to me, that it's better to use the best available instrument, the best your budget can stand, because this is your professional thing. This is important. The same for the paper. That's important.
Very good. We've got quite a few. Well, I've got a couple of other questions. Jacob says, great talk. Agree there. Could you talk a bit about the frescoes inside your church? Are you designing them? And you also noticed about the reference to the perspectival second style Pompeian wall paintings. Attenuated columns.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you for this question, because it was a challenge. Because if we decided that it not be a copy of any historical church of 18th, 19th century. That's why it was impossible to use the language of academic painting of 19th century, for example. Doesn't fit. Also, Orthodox Byzantine type medieval icons doesn't fit here also. And then, logically, if the church, we are trying to play the game that this church is something going to the early Christian and late antiquity period, that's why I insisted, and I find the team of painters, which was very difficult, who are able to work in the technique which was used in Fayum portrait in Egypt. If you remember, the wax painting, encaustica, as in Greece they say, when it's a wax with a pigment under the hot air and even flame, and it goes inside the surface. And this is for not for the frescoes, but for the iconostasis icons on the wooden panels, using this language of the early Christian, late antiquity painting, which is very rare, but there are some samples, and we can base our work being inspired by this tradition. Maybe somehow in a few days I will share the images of their work, because now I am not ready for that, but of course we have. As for the frescoes, and then maybe I will now find some.
Yes, perhaps you can put the image back up.
Yes, just a minute. I will. Yes, I think we should. I will try to find some picture.
Just to contextualize Jacob's question,
sure.
Because we are, that's when I say we, I mean Jacob, Victoria, and I are in the process of designing these, if you like, Pompeian, more third style, but similarly, it's the question of integrating it within a building is so interesting.
Okay, so
so carry on. Yes.
With this, for example, with this picture, or this even better, you can see the different, the same language, but different thing here on the wooden panels of the iconostasis. The figures and the silhouettes are almost white, light, on the very dark, almost black background. It's like something like God creates something using light from the chaotic black nihil. And for the walls, it's in a different way, because the background is intended to be gray, bluish gray, slight gray, just to show the impression of very big space behind. And if you can see here on the walls some sort of Pompeian style plasterwork, which creates first of all order, which creates order, literally, in a sense that we can see the structure like a web, where you can see the figure, the compositions, and also the difference of the scale is important, because this is quite a strong motion to show the difference of scale, because this is pretty huge for this interior, big columns, and these small wooden columns and these small columns here are closer to human scale. It's like a steps to understand the real scale of the building by means of this different size of these columns. And with this, it's a sort of a transparent screen, which is transparent enough to show the world of eternity there behind the wall. But through this order, we can shape this and we can feel the border, not a glass, but like a glass between this world and those worlds of all these saints and biblical events. So the idea is this.
Excellent, thank you. Georgia says, fantastic presentation, very brave to create this classical style in an ex-communist country. And she says, have you ever incorporated elements of traditional Armenian architecture in your designs?
Yes, of course.
And perhaps you can sort of talk a bit about those kind of.
Yes, of course. I think I will try to find something right here. Just let me see here. I will show you a little bit about my Armenian project, which is very important for me. Is it visible now?
Not yet. We're still seeing your bit of your PowerPoint.
I will do this, and then I will start the demonstration again.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yes, and this is a church built in absolutely Armenian language, because it was built in the village of my region. And this is a project which was the only one through all my career when it wasn't any contradiction between the client and the architect, because I built it entirely on my own means.
Wow.
That's why it was easy to hire the best available stone craftsmen with a huge experience of restoration of medieval churches. And we used absolutely traditional technique with the tufa blocks, with a lime mortar, with a handmade detailization, etc., etc., etc.
That's fantastic. What's the roof made of the actual?
Also stone,
Right.
but different because the orange or brown, light brown color of tufa, and the roof built of basalt. And this is under construction. Can you see it?
Yeah, you stopped sharing, I think.
No, it's this way. And now?
Oh yeah.
This is under construction. You see this cross is didn't finished yet, for example. And the roof made of also of stone, but of gray basalt. This is one of my Armenian projects, and of course, being of Armenian origin, I feel and I love our medieval architecture, of course.
Well, fantastic. I think Mark's got a final question, I think, because we're could go on all night, but I mean, we all got to go and eat or sleep or whatever. But yeah, so Mark, fire away.
Yes, we should be very grateful to Maxim because Maxim's 3 hours ahead of us. So it's we don't want to keep him up till midnight. That wouldn't be fair. So yes, no, I have one my sort of main, if you like, creative interest in the activities of Maxim's architecture and his practice is this sort of willingness to change according to circumstance the forms that are used, and to admit a certain, if you like, eclecticism, or to try and steer a way towards an original design that is also driven by sort of logic. And so that I'm thinking of the church in particular, the cathedral. So you have obviously a classical language that somehow in its handling has a sort of more Roman than usual character, but you have this composition that is so Russian, particularly with the other subordinate cupolas as dominated by the big one, and these great dramatic lanterns. And so this is personally, I feel a great sympathy with this kind of attitude, because I mean, Maxim says he didn't really want to copy. Now, we don't have to discuss exactly why one might not want to, or so on, but it's this kind of freedom to listen to, I suppose, the influences and the factors that might bear on your design, while, as Maxim mentioned, it's actually a non-traditional design in terms of the thicknesses in the plan, because he's allowing the concrete to contribute, let's say, a relative thinness, a relative lightness, and therefore the transparency he mentioned and so on. But I think it's such an interesting question for an architect who is working, admitting in historical styles or historical influences, how you are maybe accepting influences and so on, and yet you're going to hopefully come up with a coherent artistic whole, so that it doesn't appear to be a minestrone, or what we might say a mishmash of various ingredients. They're all fused together, and I think this is a really vital aspect of creative work. And I just wonder if, Maxim, if you've got any reflections on that, and maybe a bit of a difficult thing to summarize, but any thoughts on in that area?
course, because working in classical way in our world, it's impossible to do it without quite a set of reflections sometime. But first of all, I think that all of us, we cannot be escapists in the sense that we are living in our century. And it will influence on anything you do. And even when you directly want to copy something, you will build something different, like Getty Museum in Malibu, for example, or some replicas of Villa Rotonda, for example, in Britain or somewhere else. It will be different. Any architecture being built is the fruit of their own century. And so the classic architecture is a order architecture is a language. It's not a result. It's a way of thinking, and this is a language. And what you will express with this language heavily depends on your time, on your own personality, of circumstances, and whatever else. And I think what is very important is to try to do something, not copying something, but trying to act as, for example, ancient architects would do this task which is in front of you, for example, trying to think as them, using this language.
Yeah.
And this will be fruitful. I feel this way. And another very important point, going from your question, is to build something is an art of compromise. And you, Mark, are the perfect person to speak with, because discovering about Pantheon Portico is a story of one of the most important compromises of classical construction. And when you build something, everybody around you will fight with you to change your project from the very beginning. And that's why one of the most important part of architectural, not say business, but of architectural activity is to keep the initial idea and to protect initial idea from any aggressive or non-aggressive trying to change it. And this way is full of small compromises, which you agree for small compromises to avoid a big compromise. Yes. This is rather difficult. And this influence also for the result, but it's sort of a lottery, you know. Nothing guarantee you success, nothing. Even if you will use perfect Corinthian columns, you can at the end you can receive absolutely boring academic stuff without any vivid features in it. Or vice versa. Nobody knows, but that's why it's so interesting. For mostly from the money of your client to make an experiment. That's exciting.
Absolutely. Good. Yes, we can't do anything without our clients. So, you know, except in your case,
clever client is the most important thing in our business. Yeah. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that Armenian, your little church in your sort of the hometown of your ancestors, that's amazing to be able to, you know, design, build, and donate in effect. Yes. That building is a spectacular thing to have achieved. So I think if that's, you know, the fruit of your labors being reinvested in this way is absolutely amazing. So, well, I have no, I mean, of course, I've 100 more questions, but I will be lucky enough to see Maxim, hopefully, as soon as we can. We every now and then meet in Rome, and I have had the great pleasure of being hosted by Maxim in Saint Petersburg, on the occasion of going through all of the Palmyra material. So that was amazing. So I look forward to seeing Maxim in person, but one day we'll have to get you over, Maxim, to London and have you do a live event, and that will be spectacular.
With my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. So,
Thank you for your patience, and thank you for your questions. Thank you a lot.